sure we'll see the Escalante. It was about 45-minute flight, as I remember. The time that this film was taken, I estimate to be the late 50s. My first trip through, I think, was in 55, so there's 6, 7, 8, somewhere in there. That might be the Paria. This is the Escalante, I'm pretty sure. Lots of twists and turns. There's Navajo Mountain in the background there. Now I think we're probably getting close to height. I'm going to sneeze. That's the road into height. There's the ferry going across the river. You can see it there. Now we're coming into the landing strip. I've driven there, dumped all our stuff, and driven to Page, well, actually to Hole in the Rock, to Crossing of the Fathers, and then left the car and flown back. This is our group. That guy there is named Kerner, Melvin Kerner, and he is a clown. Later became sort of vice president of research for Syntex, the drug company. Now here he's pretending to be a ranger, but he doesn't know anything about all this stuff. Just acts like he does. That works in a lot of cases. And I guess we've put in, oh, the other two people, I don't know what their name. They were friends of the Kerners. And the river's going, roughly 5 miles an hour or so. We've got 120 miles to go. So that's about 24 hours. But we got 2 weeks to do it in. So we won't go very far on any particular day. This is Tapestry Wall, so named because of the streaks of this manganese oxide on the wall. And there are hazards like mud. A lot of side canyons to explore. That's why you can take 2 weeks to do a small trip. On an earlier trip, I had found some archaeologists and gotten from their map the locations of ruins, which I then put on my map. And we're going up one of those side canyons now. Forgotten Canyon, I think it is, and it's got little narrow places like this, and some steps cut in the rock that you have to climb up. Then we get to some pretty ruins up here. That was the point. Probably lunch being held out of the water. Notice we aren't very brown yet. I've gone up already and put the rope in around a nail that was probably pounded into a crack by the archaeologist. I think this was ended up being called Defiance House, because it had some pictographs around of creatures in warlike poses. Water is no problem. You got the river for one thing. Then you got all these side canyons with various flows in them. And it was long enough ago that we didn't purify the water. Just dipped it out of the river, put a fizzy in it. It was back in the days of fizzies. And although the river was very muddy, you put it into a canvas bucket at night, and by morning the debris, the sand had all settled out, and the evaporation from the wet canvas has cooled it down, so you had nice cold water in the morning, clear water. I think that canyon with the waterfalls was Lake Canyon. Of course, since they're all underwater now, it doesn't really matter all that much. And there's so few rapids around that you have to have fun in the riffles. Well, I guess there's no rapid to speak of, just little riffles like this. And this was so long ago that no permit was required, for example. No one cared that you went there or how long you stayed or what you did while you were there. You might think that you should purify your water. I don't think it was on this trip, but on another trip when the river was very muddy. I saw a dead cow floating by. Now going through this little riffle, I think I'm standing up or kneeling in the back taking this movie, and the little flip of the boat going over the top of one of these things just knocked me out of the boat. I fell over backwards and held the camera up, but then I hit the bottom. The water was only about 2 feet deep, flowing over solid sandstone, so that there I went. Then I ran along behind the boat and was back in before anybody noticed I was missing. Aside from the side canyons, there's not an awful lot to attract you to stay, just on the shore. What you want to do is to explore these side canyons for the ruins and for the water and the waterfalls and the pools. And you just flop over off the boat into the water and float along, get cool that way. The daytime temperatures would be in the low hundreds, I guess, maybe 105, 110. Till the clouds came. I had this Navy assault landing craft, inflatable, 350 pounds, including the floor, neoprene, 10-man with a motor mount. Then I had an outboard motor on it, 7.5 horses. Well, the Escalante. We didn't go up it very far because it was threatening the weather was. And also it was quite muddy, so that you had trouble. And you should notice the French spelling of river, R-I-V-I-E-R. Some pictographs. There were some trappers here in the late 1860s, somewhere like that. French. That left their names along the green. Okay, here we are at Hole in the Rock, the site of a Mormon crossing. They came down from the north, crossed, and then founded a city called Bluff after they effected their crossing, lowered their wagons off the cliffs, chopped those steps so that the animals could get down. People wear hats in this trip, just protect themselves from the sun to some degree. And that's Mrs. Kerner, Lois. Remember, all of this is underwater. This is a place called Hidden Passage, where you go up just a little ways and then you get to some big pools and some fun places. I remember on the sandbar out in front, I found a Time magazine that was full of Billy Saul Estes stories. So that would be a clue as to what time this trip took place. You have to get up over these chalk stones as best you can. Just when you think you've got it made, then suddenly you slip and you're gone. There, see, I've got it made, but not quite. And you get tired of taking pictures of that, so then you lower a rope and the other people have an easier time. Passed a bunch of Boy Scouts here one time, and everybody had to jump off, but there's one kid that just couldn't, and he was there for hours and hours and hours until finally they told him that he would have KP for the rest of the trip if he didn't jump. So he jumped. Don't do that unless you're sure the water's deep. Now, this is Music Temple. John Wesley Powell thought there'd be room for, 5,000 people there or something. But well, I think that was Mystery Canyon, because there were some steps up there, and the mystery is, where do those steps go? Backside of Navajo Mountain. There are little arches like that along, maybe pass one of those every day. You camped where you felt like it. Handprints are very common. There's a whole bunch at Deer Creek. If you take time to look along the path that goes from the fall out to the overlook at the Colorado. Forbidden, I forget what order they're in. I think there's an Aztec and Forbidden that split just before you get to Rainbow Bridge. Now the lake on occasion is under the bridge. There was some concern that all the water would cause erosion and the bridge would collapse. Here was a little spring that was close to being underneath it. A bunch of cans and glasses that were left there by other visitors. They get filled up, and you drink this cold water, and then put them back and let them fill up. Yeah, it's pretty cold. It was considerably colder than he thought it was going to be. Now we're on top of the bridge. You climb up above it on one side, and then you can climb down some steps to the top of the bridge. Now below me there is the bridge itself, going up to the right. It was about a 6-mile walk, as I remember, one way to get from the river up to the bridge. Put everything in the bottom of the boat, cover it with some wet canvas, kind of things you use in the moving vans to protect furniture, those soggy things, and then just lay on top of all of your food and duffel. And whatever his name is, everybody had to sit for a picture, and this happened to be his turn. That canyon that was just on the left there with a very sharp entrance was, I think, Dungeon Canyon. This, I think, was at Klondike Bar. A path chopped in so that sheep could get down. Horses, mules too, I guess. There was some gold prospecting in here, and a dredge was brought up from Lee's Ferry, but it never paid. You can see that canyon across the way, and that's where we'll be going next. I've seen some animals in there that sort of get trapped. One was a rather large tarantula that was just about dead. And another was an owl that had flown in, and we tried to get in front of it so it'd chase it back so it could get out, but the more we tried to do that, the farther up it got. And it was, you couldn't ever get a straight flight to take off. So he may just have stayed there until he died. My wife has slipped on the muddy bank and dislocated or broke a bone in her foot. Later she slipped again and it kind of snapped back in place and she was okay. In a moment, you'll see future research vice president come blowing across here. I'm tripping on that rope. It was an agate beach. There he's pretending to walk like my wife. These places are fun to go in because, you know, in the shade you're cool. And more than that, very little of where you get has ever seen the sun. 800 feet, maybe 1,000 feet of slot cliff. Matter of fact, sometimes you actually seek the sun out. The water is, in some places at least, just not all that deep. And unless you got a good eye for reading it, you can run up on a sandbar and have to walk your boat around to deep water again. Sometimes you can walk along on one of these sandbars that's 6 inches underwater and watch the boat go by. It sort of looks like you're walking on water. Oh, I was going to mention then that with that oar you can keep seeing how deep the water is, so you can try to stay in the channel. This is West Canyon, I think. This is where we saw a herd of sheep. When you get farther down toward Lee's Ferry, like this, where you get the animals close by on the side, you do have to be a little more careful about your water. Those critters are pretty wild. They were sure scared of us. Guy Kerner, he's going to be pushed in. Okay, as he fell in, did you notice he dropped the pump? Well, I don't think he noticed either, but it took us almost an hour to find it again. So you just dip the water in and put your fizzy in and wait a few seconds and it's ready. The fizzy is just to make the water a little more palatable. They were good. I don't know why they don't use them still. You wonder if more people had gone through and gotten publicity for this area, whether the dam would have been built. It was quite a fight more recently when they tried to build another dam that would have blocked up partway into Grand Canyon National Park. But that got shot down. Well, I think now we're out. That may have been Gunsight that we saw just a moment ago. But this is Crossing of the Fathers, which is where you had to exit the river, because between you and Lee's Ferry, where the normal exit would have been, is the growing Glen Canyon Dam. That's another way to tell when this picture was taken, because as we drive across the bridge there by the dam, you can sort of, in one brief glimpse, get a view of how much construction has taken place. For some reason I was not all that interested in the dam, so I didn't take much pictures of it, but there is the beginning of the Diversion Dam that sent the water around the site through the diversion tunnels. There's not much dam there. This is approaching that viewpoint there at the cut above Highway 89. But just when we get a pretty view, the camera wound down and I didn't take a picture of it. We drove back to Flagstaff, and they went their way, and we came back to Albuquerque. And that's it for Glen Canyon, folks. Bye.
Telling tales of ancient oceans and fiery volcanoes. Gregory Peck and Linda Hunt bring to life the breathtaking story of the man who